Hello, this lesson will help you to get started on creating a very basic animatic. For the animatic project, you'll use the storyboard panels that you created earlier this week, and you'll narrate a summary of what's going to go on in the story. Included in your narration, you'll refer to the 3 acts and the 5 plot points. Watch this example of an animatic that I created from a student's storyboard. The title for this animation is A Human's World. In Act 1, it opens with a pregnant dog living on the streets, and she's given birth to one puppy. Sadly, she dies right afterwards, and the puppy is left to fend for himself. He's doing okay with that at first, finding food and shelter where he can. The inciting incident is when the puppy gets hit by a car and loses his leg. This makes him weak and vulnerable. For the lock-in, because of his weakened state, he's caught by a dog catcher who has a cat as a sidekick. In Act 2, the dog catcher brings the puppy to the dog pound, and we start to discover just how horrible the dog catcher is. For the first culmination, we find out that not only does the dog catcher hate animals, but he plans to do experiments on them. The dog catcher's nephew comes in and sees what his horrible uncle is up to, and he threatens to tell someone and get help for the animals. For the main culmination, the dog catcher ties up the boy and threatens to kill him. And just when it looks like this isn't going to go well for the good guys, the 3-legged puppy breaks out of his cage and takes down the dog catcher, and the boy cheers. In Act 3, it looks like everything's going to be okay just at first, but for the 3rd act twist, out of nowhere, the evil cat appears and challenges the little puppy before he can save the boy. But the puppy overtakes the cat, and he does rescue the boy. In the end, the boy brings the puppy home, and they live happily ever after. So that was a very basic animatic. On a professional level, an animatic generally includes some animation. But for your project, you'll just take your storyboard panels and you'll basically use them as a slideshow. But before I give you some tips on that, I want to point out that what's equally important is your narration, because you need to refer to the 3 acts and the 5 plot points. What I'm showing you now on the screen is the script that I wrote for myself so that I could do the narration and not forget any of the parts that need to be included. So I start out talking about the Act 1, and then I go on to explain what the inciting incident is, and then the lock-in. I move on to Act 2, and I explain what the first culmination is, and the main culmination. And then finally I get to Act 3, and I describe what the 3rd act twist is, and then I tie up the conclusion of the story. And remember that you can find information about the 3 acts and the 5 plot points in an earlier assignment. Probably the most time-consuming part of this project is that you'll need to take your storyboard panels and separate them so that you can put them into your Moho project. So with this student example, they have a couple of pages of the little sketches. All right, so I had to open this up in a photo editor, separate each panel, crop out each panel, and then give it a name. So just let me know if you need some help or guidance with that. Now let's look at how I put this together. Over here in the Layers palette, you'll see that there are several audio layers, and this is my narration here. I split it up because it was a little bit too difficult to get through the whole narration without stopping. So I just recorded for a while, stopped, put it there in the Layers palette, and then continued to record. And then I had to use the sequencer over here, and you can see that those are staggered, okay? So, and if I just scroll sideways, you'll see that They're staggered across the timeline. So I've got some music in here too for background. You don't have to do that. I've got that intro for the title. The fade out layer here is for the end. And the individual storyboard panels are in a switch folder, right? So that just made it real easy to go from one to the next using the switch function. So what I used for a process made it very easy to complete this. I wrote the script for the animatic first, and then I put all of the pieces here in the layers palette. Okay, I got my title set up, the fade in and out for the title, and then I recorded my script. So once I had that in there, I knew exactly when to switch from panel to panel. So if I just open up this switch folder here, and then I'll zoom out on the timeline, and let me click on the switch folder in the layers, and I'll scrub across. And as I scrub across, if you look in the layers palette, okay, you'll see that as I'm talking, then I know exactly when to use the next panel. It's really that simple. You're welcome to get fancier with this if you want to. You don't have to use the switch folder method. You could put the panels in your layers palette and then fade in and out between them. But otherwise, you can use this most basic method to share this in a classroom discussion, and that way your classmates will see what your project plan is and you can give feedback to each other. So that's it, and let me know if you have any questions.